Hey, now listen up, I gotta tell each other. Our friend Dave, he's got a podcast as well. He's digging deep in the world of Formula One, uncovering facts. From Monaco to Silverstone, he knows them all. The fastest laps, the big crashes, he won't let them fall. He's got the stories that'll blow your mind, obscure facts and legends, it's one of a kind. So join the race, buckle up and let it begin. Dave's got the knowledge, he's got the secret within. Tune in to the podcast, let your engine ignite. With racing facts unleashed, it's gonna be a wild ride.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast with me again, Mr. David Whitehouse. And as always, we do have Wajid awaiting in the wings. There we go. There he is. His connection's a little bit better this week.
At least the camera's a lot better this week.
Yeah, you are moving slightly within reason, but just bear with me. I'm just posting out that we are live so that a few people can join, and hopefully we can prove to you, well, I'm not going to say we can prove to you, but I can prove to you that the Monaco Grand Prix wasn't boring. There you go. That's what we're going to do today. Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not sure it's what Wajid's going to do. How are you, Wajid, anyway?
Yeah, I'm good. Apologies for the slight delay to the stream. I'm currently having interviews at front and center, so fun times all around.
That's all right. Nobody knew what time it was starting anyway.
Yeah, we need to start doing a better job like that. Mostly me.
Yeah. That's okay. As we all know, as always, across the bottom is the results of the Monaco Grand Prix. And as we all know, well, if you're watching a review show and you haven't seen the Grand Prix, some people would say this is the time to actually have done that. But we'll be going through the issues that have arisen over the Grand Prix, people who have done well, people who have done badly, and then I will be protesting against everybody on social media that the Grand Prix was boring.
And
I'm not going to say it was a classic.
And everyone in the Formula One paddock.
I'm not going to say it was a classic. I'm not. But I'm not going to say it was boring. There's been worse races out there than that one.
Yeah, all in Monaco as well.
So you're still saying Spa, when Russell made the podium after 2 laps, is a better race?
Yeah, because at least there was controversy behind it.
There's controversy this weekend as well. But anyway, we will get into it.
The thing is, you could probably say that race is probably what won Max the title that year as well.
Wow, we're not going there. I am just actually going to do something to them results, because I've just realised that I've got Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and I've got everybody finishing the race. There we go. That's better. Right. So first up on the channel, we'll be talking about Charles Leclerc, a home run. Now, if you are bored of Formula One, bored of Verstappen winning everything, I think you could probably say at least 2 weeks out of the last 3 races, we've had them good heartwarming stories. But this is like Daniel Ricciardo redemption for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Especially since this man's plunked it on pole. I believe this is his 3rd time on pole in Monaco.
Which you always win from. In Monaco, you always win from pole. That's what everyone says.
Well, the only two times I've forgotten the first time, but the second time his gearbox gave out because he crashed into the barrier.
No, that was the first time.
So, first time, well, I'd forgotten what happened second time.
He finished 6th.
Oh, was it a Ferrari blunder or something?
Yeah, I think there's a blunder in there somewhere.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think this is probably better. I think this is a better feel good story than Lando's first win in Miami. He was quick. He came to Monaco with a purpose. From Friday, everyone said this man is the quickest. This man is the quickest man here. There was that brief thing with the Mercedes where Mercedes show up on a Friday, and because apparently according to them, Fridays when you get points, not Sundays. But from qualifying, he was Saturday practice and qualifying. He was locked in, and then all he had to do was drive as if he's going through the average speed camera checkers on the M1. Especially when the red flag happened. I'm not taking away from his qualifying performance. It was a mega qualifying. Like, he was on it, and at the end of the day, he reaped the rewards that he sowed in on Saturday, and you can see the emotion. When it's like he'd won a world title. The way he celebrated when he crossed the line, he said on the podium, he started crying two laps before the end because he felt like he'd done it and things like that. You could see the joy, the relief, and happiness. I think prematurely what it does say is we may actually have a title race this year, which, I mean, let's be honest, after 2 races in, no one thought was possible. So that's something.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, it was an interesting one with Charles Leclerc. He knows these streets off by heart. He probably knows every bump, every pot. Oh no, sorry, Monaco doesn't have potholes. But he knows every inch of this track. He runs around it. He cycled home. His house is just off the circuit. Even Prince Albert was in tears, And when have you ever seen the royal family grab a bottle of champagne and start spraying it at everybody? The rules in Monaco is you spray forward. It's always been the rules. And now you're turning around and spraying the prince, or it is Prince, isn't it? It's Prince Albert, not King Albert.
It's his Royal Highness Prince Albert, yeah.
Yeah, so,
But, yeah, I know, absolutely.
That whole royal family normally scarper off that podium like something chronic. And they didn't care. They didn't care. And Monegasque had won the Monaco Grand Prix. I think,
first one in 90. Was it the 93 year? Was it 93 91 year case or something?
80. I think it was 83 years, possibly. Anyway, it's been on the calendar for the whole time, and before the calendar was formed, and Monegasque had finally won it. And it's just, I think it's bigger than a Brit winning the British Grand Prix, a German winning the German Grand Prix. I think this is almost, I think it would be even bigger than, Guan Yu Zhou winning in China or anything like that.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I think this is huge because to live in Monaco, to be a Monegasque, you either have to have a lot of money or be born there. You can't you have to pay to live there if you are not home born. You pay kind of like an entrance fee almost, which is why everybody goes there, because they don't have to pay tax afterwards. But we'll brush over tax nonsense just in case Jimmy Carr's around. But yeah, we're gonna
or the F1 grid.
Or, well, most of our F1 grid, yeah. If we went through the taxes, I mean, God knows. But in terms of Leclerc, inch perfect. I mean, you could probably say, apart from the Fry blunder with pit stops and stuff, or not having the quickest car, his only issue has been that one qualifying crash, which ended up unfortunately damaging his gearbox from pole position. Or we're looking at possibly at least a two-time winner of Monaco Grand Prix. And like you say, the red flag helped. We can get into the red flag afterwards in terms of what should have happened to make this, which means what they did. Actually, let's get into it now. Because
it made no sense. It made no sense.
Liberty Media, this American company that has took over, has been about excitement, about creating a race, creating excitement. And then you've got an opportunity. The accidents before Sector 1 has finished. Sector 1 doesn't... Sykes didn't even make it to Sector 1 before he went off. Why didn't they just red flag the race and start again 1 lap shorter? Nobody would have cared.
Nope.
Apart from Charles Leclerc. And that would have brought a bit more excitement into the race. That's where the FIA got it totally and utterly wrong. There's no reason not to just fully restart that race.
Carlos Sainz was a very, very lucky boy. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say. He was a very, very, very lucky, because it was his mistake. It was his mistake that knocked him out of the race, that parked it, and he is very. I sometimes I feel like I understand the restart rules, and then events like this come up where everyone's allowed back on the grid, and even though like the race didn't become 1 lap shorter, the race carried on, but Carlos was out of the race, but everyone had crashed out of the race, but they were allowed to, like, it made no sense. And that's where the restart rules need to be cleared up, because in Australia they went 1 lap back.
Yeah,
Australia last year, but they didn't include the Alpines because the Alpines but they didn't allow the Alpines on the grid because the Alpines had crashed out, but they weren't allowed on the new grid. This time everyone was allowed back on the grid. Like the restarts make no sense. And I felt for like Lando, to be perfectly honest, because Oscar Booth, will get to the McLarens, because Oscar's cars ended up more damaged than Carlos Sainz because of the flaw, and yet Carlos Sainz has been given a reprieve, even though he's made a massive mistake going. He's essentially binned it coming out of the first corner. So, I just think everyone had got through Sector 1 by the time they red flagged it, hadn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, so for me, whoever had made it to Sector 1 shouldn't have been allowed back in the race, as harsh as that is.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that in terms of the whole situation of, I think Sykes got away with it. In terms of the red flag, I don't know where this, we must count the 64th mini sector, the 6,472 mini sectors there is on the circuit. Why are we doing that? There's a big crash up the hill, needs clearing up. They haven't completed a lap. Restart the race.
Yep.
And if you want to be awkward, go. You can't change tyres. You have to start on what you decided on.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that rule is totally farcical. How? What, you red flag the race, so therefore people who got really, really lucky because an accident has caused significant damage to a barricade, or there's so much debris on the track that you need to stop the race to clear up. How do you get rewarded because you stayed out on your tires? It is one of the stupidest rules, because because the one that really sticks to mind is Lance Stroll in in Italy. Is it 2020 when it with the with the Darth Vader Mercedes. Lance Stroll was nowhere in that race. Lance Stroll had no right to. Was never ever. If the race had carried on, Lance Stroll was not getting a podium. He was going to drop back down the field, end up backwards, and he's been rewarded because he just managed to stay on his tires longer. Gasly's luck, I totally understand. They went for a risk. They on the soft tires, pitted early and thought, right, well, is where it is. How do you get rewarded for? How can you reward people because you've had to stop the race? Like,
well, this is something Lewis obviously brought up on the radio, and we'll definitely get into Lewis and his comments this weekend because they were kind of cryptic but interesting as well. But in terms of a tyre situation, I just don't get why more people didn't go soft tyre, get off the line, maybe gain a position or two. If they'd been on the soft tyre, for example, Lewis would have been past Max into turn one.
I don't think you would have because the way Max came across.
There's a chance of a better launch. If he'd done that and got ahead, and then the red flag come out, he's got his advantage from the soft tyre, and now he's gone. And if there's a safety car, you got your advantage of a free pit stop.
No, but it wouldn't have mattered because the restart they just put them all back in their normal position because of the mini sector.
Well, no, because he would have been past it.
Yeah, they still would have found a way.
But yeah, who knows? Anyway, so Charles Leclerc, great home victory, pushed all the way. I have to be said by Piastri, Sainz, and Norris. I mean, push is an optimal word, but we'll move on to perfect Piastri now because there wasn't much more he could do this weekend apart from stick it on pole. He did catch a wall. Was it in qualifying or FP3, which sort of set him back slightly?
FP3.
But, I think while everybody will jump on it and say it was a great result, yes, it was a great result, but there's still a few issues there with Piastri and tyre wear, which we've mentioned many times before. And as soon as he kind of disappeared to as soon as Charles decided to push, Piastri didn't have the tyres to keep up.
Yeah, he's got a habit of burning his tyres, and I think it was very immature, given you knew more than likely you weren't pitting again.
Yeah.
You were already driving 4 to 5 elapsed seconds slower than you normally do. Like I said, you were going at average speed camera pace. He could have backed up for 40 laps and then gone for it for the last 30 to be. There was no need. You gave it the first 5. He had like a. Excuse me. He had like a. I don't want to call it a half cent. When he came out of the tunnel, where I have been screaming they need a DRS if they need a DRS point there, but whatever. He had a half look and then that was it. Because he'd driven behind the gearbox of the Ferrari for 50 laps, by the end his tires just went, yeah, nah. But hey, ground effect cars have no effects on tire wear. That's why we've got ground effect cars.
Well, I've got to say one thing. While I know it was a tribute to this man here, that livery honestly just brought back A1GP Australia vibes.
It gave me.
It felt like we're worshipping Piastri.
It gave me the Jordan.
Yeah.
The Jordan, was it no? It gave me the camel livery Schumacher car. That's the vibe it gave me. I was like, that's a Brazilian flag. That's a tribute to Senna.
I was honestly watching it, just thinking it looks like Piastri's car. They should have done, especially the overalls. Just looked like you should have done them in Australia. But yeah,
They should, if they wanted to do a send a tribute, they should have just gone with the red and white Marlboro. To be perfectly honest,
could have done, yeah. But I suppose the problem is, it's like how what that is linked to, and the whole. It's whether they can do that, because obviously people will link it to Marlboro.
But they look like the Camel cigarette car that Schumacher used to drive. So what's the difference?
Well, yeah, but you got to know your history to get involved with that. Whereas with F1,
I guess so.
That livery is Marlboro. Everybody knows it.
Yeah, and obviously, according to F1 fans, Formula One only started when Drive to Survive started, didn't it? So,
yeah, exactly. And also, unless it's got that car in it, most of F1, even Liberty Media, don't put highlights out, so it doesn't really matter.
True fairness.
But yeah, Piastri, I think a really strong weekend, but because of the circuit, because of the situation the race was in, we didn't then see the normal drop-off. And McLaren have had it again. We said it in the last one. They have one driver who can start the Grand Prix and one driver who can end the Grand Prix. And it's Piastri, followed by Norris. If Norris had... I just think if Norris had pushed a little bit harder at the start of the Grand Prix, he would have had the chance to pit, stick some nice tyres on and just go for it. You know, whether he's there or not. But that one point, I know Verstappen didn't pick up that point in the end. It went to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
But why not? I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? He finishes fourth. But instead, he got to this stage where he's hovering around, and Ferrari were easily backing him up. And then Norris was sitting 2 seconds off the back of him. Hurry him along.
Yeah, what have you? I'm with you. What have you got to? The Ferrari and the Ferrari and the the Ferrari and the McLaren were by far and away the two quickest cars. I think even if Max had managed to pass George Russell, I don't think given he'd have had to drive the wheels off the Red Bull, and he wasn't going to do that. Given how the Red Bull has been. Given how the Red Bull was this weekend, but no, I'm 100% with you. I think by 55 laps in, he had best part of 25 seconds over George Russell. He had a pit stop advantage. Go on the softs. I'm with you. What is the worst that's going to forget the fastest lap? What's the worst that's going to happen? What is the worst that's going to? You're going to come out fourth. You'll burn through the tires, but because everyone is driving 5 to 6 seconds a lap slower anyway, and they'd have been on 50 plus laps tires that are slower than yours. What's the what? To be honest, I thought if they were going to pit any of the two McLarens, they should have pitted Piastri. All right, cool. He drops from second to third. For me, you're on the podium in Monaco anyway. They'd have told Lando, get the hell out of the way. So he wouldn't have had to focus on Lando. It's just science.
Yeah. And the other side of it on that, I was thinking it during the race, Piastri had the gap to Russell. But if he'd caught Norris and then, say, for example, you decide, no, let's call off the fight. Piastri's pace isn't enough to fight Ferraris. We'll just call it off. You call it off. You finish third and fourth. Yes, that changes the Constructors' Championship. So McLaren, but they're still currently well off Ferrari. Talking about 70 points off. But
it's only it's only a 6-point swing.
Yeah,
it's 18 to 15. It only would have been a 6-point swing.
Exactly, and I'm just currently realizing I haven't actually rearranged the points because hardly anybody moved. So I'm just going to rearrange Sergio Perez into order. But I'm pressing wrong buttons. You're lucky I haven't stopped the stream there. But yeah, you've got this position that let's put it this way. Say Lando now loses the championship by a couple of points. That was a perfect opportunity to leapfrog. I know Piastri's driven really well, but Piastri is on 71 points right now. He is not in this championship fight. He's 98 points off the leader. Norris is 56. That could have been, let me try and remember the points drop. So Piastri would have dropped 6 points, but gained 3 for Norris. So another 3 for Norris. You're looking a couple of race victories and a couple of points. Fastest laps with Max Verstappen retiring could happen. Norris is there. Now he's got an extra 3 points to gain. Yes, in the whole grand scheme of things, yeah, probably shouldn't do it. But McLaren have to back one horse at the moment, because if Piastri keeps up this form, they're going to take points off each other.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I think McLaren is so confused at the improvement of their car that they don't know how to. You need the mindset of a championship team. They've not been a championship team since Lewis. Yeah, Lewis was the last world champion, wasn't he? 2008?
Lewis was the last world champion, but the last time they fought for a championship was 2013. 14, sorry. 12. I know which way I'm going. 2012 was the last time they fought for a championship.
Was that when it was five world champions could have won at Abu Dhabi? That one, where Lewis went in on 24 points. Yeah. Right, yeah. So but that was a totally different management, wasn't it? That was Whitmarsh, and
that was Whitmarsh at the time.
Yeah. So it's a totally different management structure. They've not been in this position for the best part of 13 years. I think so. For some reason, we go to Canada. So because F1's European tour was longer than Newcastle's European tour was this year and next year.
He had to get that in, didn't he?
Yeah, I did, because I've been dealing with it. So I think if Lando has a very, very good result in Canada, then McLaren will make the decision in Catalonia, because if this is going to be a three-way title fight, it's going to be Max versus Charles versus Lando. It's not going to be Sainz. Ferrari, I'm going to back Sainz. Sainz's form and given how Sainz started the season and now his form has just dipped off massively, Leclerc is showing why he's number one in that team. Lando established himself as number one, and if I was Red Bull, which I believe we'll get to next, I would be very, very worried that I have the weakest second driver out of those three teams.
Yeah, we'll definitely get on to Sergio Perez in a minute. Do you think that, you were saying about the different management structure at McLaren, not used to winning and everything. We're looking at a team which technically took 3 runners-up places in one day. It finished second in Formula E with Jake Hughes. Great drive, by the way, by Jake, because for those who don't know Jake, he started karting very late in his teens. So for him to be in Formula E is brilliant by him. So great news for Jake Hughes. Sam Bird sadly retired from that race. We had second place for Pato O'Ward at Indy, which is something which, brings tears to my eyes as it is, because just the way he reacted to it. And also it was a very tiring night. That's why we didn't do the watch long.
Well, I don't understand why Pato's gone for the overtake on the lap before. But whatever. Anyway, wrong review show.
And Piastri finished second. So, does that say something about the way that the hello Jimmy in the chat? Does that say something about the mindset inside the team that we've now gone for 3 runners up? I mean, it must be a record, 3 runners up spots in one day.
and two of them at the Triple Crown events.
Yes. Also, going back to that Piastri decision, to add onto that question, the idea of not pitting Piastri and putting him behind Norris, is that something to do with Zach Brown not being in Monaco?
No, because you think the engineering team and the likes of Seidel, it's not. Is it Andreas? Is it Andreas Seidel? That's
Stella.
Stella. Sorry, thank you. That they'd be competent enough to make the decision. Lando would have moved out of the way, right? And even if he doesn't move out of the way, then you can solve the issues. For me, there's no difference. For me, in Monaco, there's no difference between second and third. You're either first loser or second. You're either first loser or second loser. It's all about the win. If he'd just take the gamble, you want in Ferrari's position. Ferrari were never going to give track position. Everyone knew that. Science didn't have the tires to be rear gunner for Charles Leclerc, especially if you come out with fresh rubber.
Yeah.
So what? And he couldn't have gone any sub because Carlos Sainz was on the radio all the time complaining that Charles driving too slow, tell Charles to speed up, etc., etc. That would have been your best shot. There's no difference between second and third. I really think Lando would have moved over, to be honest. There's no difference between second and third.
Yeah. Yeah. As I say, it stopped Ferrari having an easy 1-2, I suppose. So that's the one side of it. As we know from constructors' points, they could be battling by the end of the season. But we'll move on to a team which didn't have the best of weekends and have a lot of accident damage to sort out for Canada. We move on to Red Bull. Now, we put Red Bull troubles. Are they really in trouble, or is it just some kind of thing? Now, we said in Miami, not the quickest car. We know, it's put down to damage to the car. In Imola, not the quickest car, but managed to win the race. This weekend, not the quickest car. The third quickest car at most, could even be called the fourth quickest car. What do you think about Red Bull and this weekend?
I don't think it's fourth quickest. I think he'd have beaten George at qualifying if he didn't make that mistake. So we'll go third quickest. That car is really sensitive all of a sudden, and to say does it go hand in hand with Adrian Newey no longer being at every single race?
Well, he was in the garage, but in his civvies.
No, but like Red Bull wanted to make it a point that Adrian Newey had nothing to do with the car and stuff like that. But as soon as he stopped showing up to every single race, like their window, which was like this, has become like this all of a sudden. It's like this now. He was nowhere, and he was forcing it in Monaco. He made a mistake. We're seeing 2021 Max because he doesn't have a car which is 5 seconds ahead of everyone. We're seeing those little chinks in the armor. We're seeing the errors. Okay, yes, he still has, I believe, a 30 or 31 point lead over Charles Leclerc. But from Australia, from when we left in Australia, and it was like, he's gone out. Oh, he'll be back at China. So from China, from where we were in sort of China, where it was how quick is he going to wrap up this title? 3 races later, everyone's going, is what's going on? I think that we'll be back at Canada because that thing is still the quickest thing in a straight line with the double DRS thing it has and things like that. But we're going to bumpy, slower tracks in Hungary. Catalonia is not the smoothest racetrack. Yes, they might be okay because they have they have so much. They have testing data there from like 1835 because that's all that's wherever they did test.
Yeah.
So they might be okay in Catalonia, but we've got lower speed sort of corners, and I think the Red Bulls in trouble. I think we have a title race. It's too early to say if in trouble. And I'm gonna wait till I'm gonna wait till the end of Catalonia to make my decision on that. If we get, I think I said it. So I think sorry just to finish the point.
Yeah.
But I think I said it in Miami. If we get to Catalonia and someone is within 25 points of Max, we have a title race, and I still stand on that.
Well, I remember in the preview saying before the next 3 races is important because we'd had a couple where Max had still taken a victory. He hadn't been the quickest, but it's Miami. It's a weird kind of circuit, Singapore, Mercedes kind of thing. Then we went to Imola. Didn't quite like riding the curbs, which aren't really existent in Imola as much as they used to be. And then we went to Monaco, where anything can kind of happen. So it's all kind of quirky as such. Now we go to Canada, again, a quirky kind of circuit. Things happen there that, I think back to all the years I've been watching. 97, the first ever finish under the safety car with Olivier. No, 98 was the first ever finish under the safety car. Or 99. 99, sorry, Frenson's brakes. 97, we had the Panis leg brake. We've had Lewis Hamilton's first victories. We've had Wirtz on the podium. We had 2 Jordans in 95. We had
the 2012 full race stops with Jensen.
Exactly, the 4-hour delay or whatever. We had John Lacey winning in the Ferrari. We've had even the dominant Mercedes lost their first hybrid race here because of
the
engine trouble.
Yeah, the brakes and engine.
And Danny Rick took his debut win. You had Kubica redemption the year after, where Nick Heidfeld could have finally broke that record, but his one-stop strategy trumped by his teammates too. You had, and that year, Massa could have won it. Perez could have won it in Force India. Canada isn't a simple race. So for me, we kind of forget about Canada. What happens will happen there. But you do have to be able to ride the curbs. That is part of Canada. Red Bull. Then you go to Spain. And like you say, lots of data for that place. And then we go to Austria. Now, that could be a big one because we know how dominant Red Bull are around Austria. If we go to Austria, Red Bull aren't dominant. We have a title fight. But also, Canada doesn't like riding the curbs. Spain, McLaren loves fast-flowing corners, which I was surprised it did really well around Monaco. That took me aback a little bit.
So was I.
So then we go, after we've done that, as we go into July,
Grand Prix. And Lando is very, very good in Austria. I think people underestimate how good Lando is in Austria as well.
Well, I mean, when there's only 10 corners, it's not exactly rocket science.
I mean, we love singing Max's praise in Austria, so it's just the same. True.
But then July, we've got British Grand Prix. McLaren will be good round there. I remember Lewis claiming about it last season when he was following them. Hungary.
They're going to struggle. They're going to struggle in Hungary.
Yeah, they really don't always dominate around Hungary. And then we'll wait until Spa, where McLaren could be good. Again, fast-flowing corners. So we're waiting for the Dutch Grand Prix, where we think Max Verstappen's going to next dominate completely.
But I don't.
Don't hold us to that.
But the thing is, given the way Zandvoort is the first and third section are faster flowing, but that tight twisty second sector, where you have to again ride the curbs, you have to ride the curbs in Zandvoort as well to get every bit of track. If the car is this sensitive, there's a good chance he doesn't win in Zandvoort. And all the Dutch Grand Prix, no one says has been on the calendar, is Max winning in Zandvoort.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Let's put it that way. This is not going to be the boring season we expected. We're going to forget about the little Dutchman, well, tall Dutchman, and go on to the little Mexican. Now, the first thing we're going to say is we're going to look at the incident, the whole weekend as a whole, and then we'll look at the incident itself. So Sergio Perez struggled this weekend, cannot muscle a car going. And again, we're looking at the Jensen Button kind of thing, where if the car isn't set up, Sergio Perez will not be on the run.
No, we're just looking at mid-season checker where you think, oh, this could be the year. Then we get to it's just Checo, and I alluded to it earlier in the stream, and I'm going to say it again. If we are in for a title fight, Red Bull's pandering to Max about not having a strong second driver could now come back to bite them hard on the ass. And this is what happens when you tailor the car to one person only. The upgrades are pointed towards Max, and the entire team is built around him, a la Schumacher. Checo was absolutely nowhere, and he's never struggled this much in Monaco. He has struggled in Monaco, never this much. He was.
Well, it's the street circuit as well.
Yeah. He was absolutely nowhere. Even when he got that next lap in Q1, he was still only 14th. He was nowhere in practice. He was 11th, 12th. He was nowhere all weekend. And the incident itself, yeah, he was a passenger. But when you are that far down the grid in Monaco, that's what you leave yourself open to.
There is that. The commentators were quite clear on where they placed the blame initially. Anthony Davidson sort of playing devil's advocate. I'm going to throw my 2 pence worth in first. I actually think it was Sergio Perez's fault. I completely get where K-Mag could have backed out. But why would you? Why would you on a Monaco Grand Prix that you know you've got to make moves when you can? Sergio Perez has looked across twice to see that he knows he's got a bad exit. He's fighting the car out of Sandevart on the rear tyres. He knows he's got a bad exit. He's got 3 cars behind him. Somebody's going to get a run. And when you can see it's a Haas, knowing it's probably K-Mag, you kind of treat him a bit differently. You know, it's like Lewis always said about Max, I'll treat him differently when I overtake him. It's like you would do when you tried to pass. He's not as bad as Maldonado, but in terms of passing Maldonado, you give him that little bit of space. And surely, if you put yourself where Sergio Perez was, you've seen him give a bit more space. You've got the inside for the next corner. You'll be on the inside as well. There's no way K-Mag's got enough momentum to get around the outside of there. You're still ahead of him, and you're in the race. Instead, he's actually made it so even Max can't gain positions.
And I know the cars are walking around like they've got BBLs now, given how wide they are. But you have seen cars go too wide up that hill. Like they were making it like the way these guys love hyping. We've seen cars go too wide all the way up the hill and around the outside and stuff like that. So let's not make it out like it's totally impossible. I'm totally with you. He starts moving right. No one wants to talk about it. He moves off the racing line, starts moving right. K-Mag doesn't move left. K-Mag steering wheel stays bang straight. It is Checo Perez that starts moving right on the narrowest circuit on the grid. And that's what caused the accident. Why are you not going to, like, everyone complains you can't overtake in Monaco. Everyone knows you can't overtake in Monaco. Generally, you can't overtake in Monaco. So therefore you're now going to go at a driver who's tried to overtake in Monaco. Bear in mind, this is the same driver in Miami who Sky F1 were praising to the high heavens for driving people off the road to like what 3 weeks ago or whatever. So what now because we've had an accident, it's been dangerous driving. This is the only way K-Mag's been driving all season. So what now because it's an accident, it's dangerous. We're not doing this.
Well, I will also throw out there for people who don't know, there was a photographer who was slightly injured, went to hospital. He is okay, as you saw them diving out the way of the barrier. But I will say one thing. Christian Horner wasn't very vocal on the radio saying that K-Mag tried to kill Perez. Do you think he's learned his lesson? Maybe he doesn't think K-Mag's in the championship fight for some reason. Anyway, so Red Bull.
You mean Sergio?
Well, we know Sergio's definitely not. But yeah, I have to admit, because they didn't cut to it straight away, because it was such a big crash, I thought the red flag was for Carlos Sainz. I was like, really?
No, 100%. I was
100%.
100%. I was with you as well. I was like, well, the red flag because he's like normally that's just a safety car. Then they went back to the hills like,
yeah, there's a few bits missing off that Red Bull. Yeah, and unfortunately, Nico Hulkenberg, who went, oh, I've got past this, bang. And fair play to Guan Yu Zhou, who's been watching too much Ralph Schumacher from Spa 98, just parking at the back, let it finish, and then I'll pop through after. Great driving there by the Chinese driver. Another incident, though, that happened on the opening lap of the first start has left a French team, Alpine, with a very important job to start deciding. Now, we said this was going to happen when you put Ocon and Gasly, former rivals in the French Kart Championship, World Kart Championship, moving through the ranks. You put them in the same team, you know, girlfriends going separate ways. You know, things haven't been too bad. But again, we get this. You know, I've been a defender of Ocon quite often with the Perez situations because Perez was quite often moving across as well. But these running with teammates, you know, Ocon and Verstappen, when he was unlapping himself, completely Verstappen's fault, in my opinion. He should have, you know, like, just let him go. But anyway, there's too many of these run-ins with teammates. And Alpine have kind of got to a stage. I mean, Bruno Famin was very vocal in the heat of the moment on French TV. I think it was Canal TV.
Canal Plus, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Plus. You know, how did I get that wrong? But I think, you know, as it was on Canal TV and we were in Monaco, I think Esteban Ocon might be sitting on a boat in Montreal. That's a rumour at the moment. You know, there's discussions with Jack Doohan.
And Mick Schumacher as well for some reason.
I haven't heard anything about Mick myself, but
Planet F1 this morning.
I do think there is rumours of Mick coming in next season. Jack Doohan doing a lot of testing. Both drivers, I have to admit, Gasly and Ocon, both looking elsewhere for drives next season as well, just in case something opens up. Can't quite see where Gasly's going to end up, but Ocon apparently rumoured talking to Williams, talking to Haas, and also apparently talking to Sauber, which could put the Ocon Hulkenberg back together, which I'm not sure Nico wants too much because he might not actually finish races because of his teammate. Oh, he's doing that now. But anyway, do you, one, the incident itself, do you put 100% blame on Esteban Ocon?
90%.
2, do you swap the drivers? Do you punish Ocon if you do think he was at fault? And 3, who are you putting in that car if you do that?
I'm not swapping. The only reason Alpine are desperate this year is because of how dog the car is. Let's be let's be totally honest. When it was the Pink Panther in Australia, people forget really quickly how Gasly went off the track, came across, paid no attention to his mirrors, and wiped him and his teammate out. The 3-lap restart
last year.
Yeah. So I didn't hear the Alpine team boss saying "Sacre bleu" and and they put custard in the cream or whatever French sayings go. So I didn't hear him screaming and shouting then. Ocon's problem, to be perfectly honest, is Ocon's reputation precedes him as someone who always ends up in an incident with that. That's the reputation he now has.
Yeah.
Like it's he's magnetized to his teammate's car. I don't know if he feels lonely or he feels like he needs to prove, like maybe it's a testing of manhood thing. I don't know. So yeah, 90% of his blame. Did he deserve to be chewed up, spat out like yesterday's food? No. It's only because Alpine are totally desperate. The Alpine boss is probably worried that Renault are going to pull the plug again next year because the car's going backwards again, like they do every sort of 6 to 8 years when the cycle finishes. So that's why he's probably screaming and shouting. The Renault bosses were probably there in France looking over. Obviously, it's Monaco.
Yeah,
it's with us not having a French Grand Prix no more. It's essentially their home race now. So, do I think he needs to be taken out of the car? No, not at all. It's a mistake. It was a mistake. If Haas don't care how many chassis Magnussen go through, I don't understand why Alpine care. Your car's total shite anyway. So you're gonna stick McDowan in the car and you're gonna go from 18th to 19th or 18th to 17th. You're not winning in Canada, so why does it matter? And I just think Ocon's got to be. I just think Ocon has to be very, very careful that his reputation as a quickish driver who is very prone to accidents doesn't overshadow everything, because it's just, like I said, it's just it's one too many incidents now, and I think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And in terms of Ocon, there's two sides of it for me. I think also, if they're thinking that they're going to be replacing one of them next season,
or both,
or both, and they've got what is they are developing the car slowly, but it's not really they're getting somewhere with it, aren't they? They've scored points now in 2 races in a row. Yes, 2 10th places, and I suppose Alpine are sitting there going, well, if another car dropped out, Ocon was only behind Gasly. Could they have got a double points finish in Monaco, and that puts them 8th in the championship, possibly be getting ahead of Haas? Oh, we're 7th. We're back where we should kind of be. They should be ahead of RB and stuff as well. But we're let's. I'm going to take it the other way. It's Ocon's fault. They decide to replace him. You're probably looking Jack Doohan. He's the guy who's out there. We've mentioned Mick Schumacher. He's been heavily linked because of him being in the sports car program and doing really well for Alpine. Now, if Alpine are going to stay next season and are going to stick somebody else in the car, Jack Doohan's going out doing private testing practically every week at the moment. Why not just stick him in the car and do some race weekends?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're.
Yeah, this is just an excuse to be able to cut up our contract, really.
No, absolutely.
That would be bringing the team into disrepute.
No, I totally understand. I just feel, given the state of how some drivers have driven this year, it's just, and even the incidences Gasly and Ocon have had, I just feel like it's a really weird time to all of a sudden develop some sort of boss conscience and some complex that, you know, your drivers should be running into each other. It just screams there's things going on behind the scene more than anything else.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that, and it's something I think I expect a little bit more from Renault in terms of Ocon's, but probably being the better of the two drivers, only just over 2 seasons or 1 and a bit seasons. So, you know, it's hard to really put your money behind Gasly ahead of Ocon, but there's also the rumour, or at least I've been told, that Ocon was told not to challenge Gasly in the first lap, or, you know, unless it was perfectly clear that Gasly had a problem, and you know, if you're going to fight everybody else, not your teammate. If the team order was there to do that, and yes, they are there to race, and Ocon didn't follow that team, does that change the situation?
I don't think so. I really don't. I don't know. I think it's just one of those we have to sort of wait and see what happens. I have a tendency to be very, very wrong on this podcast. So,
as you'll find out from our predictions very soon.
So I'm just going to leave it as that way. So let's wait and see.
Yeah. If you are going next season right now, I mean, we'll obviously do a driver's lineup video at some point, but if you're going to stick somebody in the car, I'm going to put you on the line. Who do you stick in the car instead of Ocon in Canada?
I'd probably do him.
That's fine. I wanted to get it out of you that Ocon was going. I could just clip that bit now and just go, yeah, he said Ocon was going. We're going to have a quick look at Mercedes. They could have tried. They made a few mistakes this weekend in terms of not telling Lewis to push on his outlap. Could have got ahead of Max. Wouldn't have made a huge amount of difference. But Lewis Hamilton coming out with a lot of comments over the weekend, sort of after qualifying, saying I'm always going to be 2 tenths behind, or never going to out qualify George, which seemed very, not resigned, but very cryptic, very, like, not that George was getting new parts or anything like that. It seemed like something else was going on in that garage. Now, I know people in Mercedes garage, and none of them mechanics would be like, oh, well, we're going to make a slower car for Lewis. But what's going on? Is it the order they're going out in qualifying and things like that?
No, because Mercedes alternate on the, like, I've seen, like, I think he's checked out. I think
he did seem like it.
I think he's so fed up with I think he's been so fed up with telling Mercedes for 3 years they were going in the wrong direction, getting ignored. He's now also seeing the car that he's going into next year going, well, there's a really good chance I could be challenging for a world title next year. For all the hype Sky are giving him of, you know, I think he's 7-1 down in qualifying. I think he's only like 10 points behind George.
Yeah.
But is it 10 or 12?
It is 12.
Yeah, so and when all you've done is compete for a world title and wins, I think it's very, very difficult. I think it's very, very difficult to be bothered racing when all you've done your entire career is race for wins, race for championships, to get up and go, oh, it's gonna be 6th place, it's gonna be 7th place. There is that, but also, do you think maybe Lewis has lost a tenth or two in his old age? You maybe think Lewis isn't as quick as he used to be?
Personally, I don't, because I still think that if he was in that Ferrari this season, he'd be a lot closer to Max and Charles and Carlos are in terms of points. Because I think if you watch Lewis's race performances where he can't really be affected he just gets out and drives it. If the team tell him to slow down, that's his kind of choice and whatever. I mean, he can do it, but does he do it? It's completely different. He has checked out a little bit. You can see him a lot more relaxed, a bit more smiley, even at the bad results or whatever. I mean, are we looking at a Prost 1991?
Yeah.
No, are we looking at Lewis Hamilton being out of a drive before the end of the season, and Mercedes going, yeah, we'll stick Kimi in the car?
I don't think so. Do you imagine the fallout? I don't think so.
Well, I think the rate it's going, I think the fallout's already going to be there. There's a lot, let's say, it's a lot of cryptic comments. And George, this weekend, yes, okay, the strategies were different between the two cars, but this is the first weekend for a long time where I could say George Russell out-raced Lewis slightly, but it was helped by qualifying. It was helped by the qualifying ahead. And this is the race where Lewis probably went, well, if George is going to out-qualify me anyway, he's going to beat me in the race because it's Monaco.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think the thing you can also see, this relationship between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton hasn't worked. Like there was a lot of synergy between Bottas and Hamilton. Yeah, Hamilton probably knew he had.
I would say
Bottas
there's even better synergy between Russell and Rosberg and Hamilton, because at least they're pushing each other. Yeah,
I think so. I think George Russell still got this weird obsession of needing to beat Lewis, and yeah, he's kicking his ass in qualifying. I think it's like 6-1 or 7-1 this year, but it's not translated to anything. He's only still 12. He's only 12 points ahead. I still think Lewis is going to beat him in the point standing, which will lead for really awkward conversations. To be honest, all is not well in Mercedes. I think you're the first person to put out we might have a Prost 91 situation, and if you're right, you best clip that thing, send it to everyone, say I called this. But you can tell he does not care. Lewis Hamilton does not care. Now let's see what happens in Canada, because traditionally Canada, Hungary, and Silverstone have always been three of his strongest circuits. So let's see what happens in Canada. If he totally checks out in Canada, like he just can't be asked or whatever, then we know. Then we know where Lewis is. But I think it's just because even his radio with Bono, I've never seen him that ticked off with Bono over the radio before, where he's just going, I told you all, why did we do this way? Why didn't you listen to me? So yeah, we'll see what happens in Canada. If he doesn't get a result in Canada, or he's driving at 80%, then he's checked out.
And over on Twitch, thank you, Monsanto TV, for the follow. In terms of this Prost Ferrari 91 idea, I mean, we've obviously seen already there's been questions about whether Kimi Antonelli can
Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah.
Whether
Kimi can have a super license to race. Now, if you weren't thinking of swapping your drivers over, why are you asking that question? Because he's old enough. Very, very soon, I think his birthday is. So he's going to be old enough to race anyway. So if you were going to get rid of Lewis later in the season, then it doesn't matter. But, I mean, Lewis, if he could work his way out of that contract, which I don't think Mercedes is going to let him do, he's obviously got the whole of Fiorano and a load of older Ferrari F1 cars to go and have some fun for a few months, chill out, and be ready for next season. And I do think, honestly, if Ferrari are as strong as they are this season, Lewis Hamilton Ferrari are going to be a right match next season.
And add Adrian to the mix as well for 2026.
Well, we'll wait on that one. It depends whether he decides the Italian Riviera is where he wants to end up.
But no, I'm with you. I think Lewis is totally checked out. But do you imagine the fallout? Do you imagine the like? I think people forgot. I think people have already forgotten the online traction Lewis to Ferrari got. Do you imagine F1 Twitter if Mercedes terminated his contract early, so he could go and start getting used to the Ferrari settings for 3-4 months?
Yeah, it wouldn't be the best idea by Mercedes, but what we've got to remember with Mercedes is they've got the future to look at now. You know, obviously they're not going to be winning next season. Do you
or the season after?
Yeah, we've said with George Russell, we've got with George, he now needs to be challenged, and not by Lewis, because we know the situation with his. You know, this is where Mercedes need to bite the bullet, and they need to go for like sites and go winner takes all next season. I'm telling you now, instead of putting Kimi Antonelli in the car, because while Kimi did a good job in Monaco, he got overtaken around the outside by with a brilliant cutback by Ollie Behrman. You know, so I don't feel he is quite ready for Formula One. But go on.
I was just going to say, I feel like the hype of Antonelli is now, we're getting to the point where the hype of Antonelli has exceeded what he's achieved and his talent.
Yeah, could be very much so. So before we move on to the big topic, which I wanted to put into this podcast, so we won't keep you much longer, but quickly onto the qualifying and race predictions that we did. Don't worry, I wasn't going to throw up there. It was just a hiccup. I think a lot of people may have thought we were going to get a nice clip there for YouTube. Qualifying, Wadge's prediction in 5th place, Oscar Piastri. 4th place, Lando Norris. You can have a tick for that. 3rd place, you had Lewis Hamilton. 2nd, Verstappen, and 1st, Leclerc. So you can have 2. That's quite good for you.
It's quite good in general. It's quite good for this podcast.
Yeah. For me, I went Piastri 5th. Wrong. Sainz 4th. Wrong. Norris 3rd. Wrong. Verstappen 2nd. Leclerc on pole. Hey, I'll take that. And then we'll go on to the race predictions we had. Let me just change the race result over. Not that it's much different to qualifying.
I think you did all right with your race results.
We won't talk about my race results. Your predictions were Hamilton 5th. Yeah,
wrong Mercedes.
4th, Verstappen. 3rd, Piastri. 2nd, Norris. 1st, Leclerc. So you get a nice tick for victory. And you did get McLaren in 2nd place, just the wrong one. Mine, I said Norris to win, Leclerc to be 2nd, Hamilton to be 3rd, Piastri to be 4th. So I've got a McLaren at least. And we won't talk about 5th place.
Did you say Daniel
Alonso?
Alonso, that was it.
Yeah. As soon as he went out in Q3, Q1, I was
Q1.
like, oh dear. So yeah, our as you all know from our predictions, having Fernando Alonso, I've said Ricciardo, I've said Alonso. I might just play it safe for candidate, but then I'll be completely wrong anyway.
But actually, in fairness to you, quickly before we do move, you categorically on the preview show called there won't be a Red Bull in the top 5.
True.
So I will give you that. I will give you your
okay.
I will give you props.
Right.
No. I'll give you your props for that. You categorically said there won't be a Red Bull in the top 5.
And we did say safety car, but we got a red flag instead. So, hey, we may as well predict that K-Mag's going to crash into somebody.
All right, let's get into it.
Here we go. The big one for everybody to talk about. Why the Monaco Grand Prix was not boring. Now, social media has gone wild with this. It was boring. They've handed out the sheets where you can see the cars moving across and nobody overtaking. Wajid?
No, I'll let you go. No.
I'm going to let you go first because I've got to rebuff why it was boring.
Okay.
You think it was dull and boring. Now, please, before anybody jumps on the chat, I am not turning around and saying this was a classic. I really am not. Wajid, why was the Monaco Grand Prix boring?
I love how you put air quotations around that.
It's an opinion.
This is the only race where the cars can drive 6 seconds a lap slower than they should, and there is no punishment for it. There is no jeopardy if you drive 6, 7, 8. Leclerc could have driven like a Sunday driver on the M62. No one was overtaking him, because the only two places you need traction, the start finish straight, which is too small to overtake anyway, and out of the tunnel where there's no DRS, so that's totally pointless. As well. So you only need those 2 points. Aside from that, you could have backed everything up. As soon as the red flag came and they ever could change tires, everyone knew no one was pitting. The McLarens didn't want to bother taking a risk because they were so bothered about their track position, because they probably knew their cars weren't getting, as much as we'd love to talk about hypothetically, realistically, and we should have said it earlier, those cars weren't going to pass Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz would have done the Alonso and backed everyone up, so Charles Leclerc was 55 seconds up the road. There needs to be an overtaking, one place to overtake in Monaco. Qualifying, absolutely, I get it is the best qualifying. It probably is the best qualifying of the year. That I'm not going to disagree. But the race is totally farcical. It is a glorified procession, and unless there is rain, a monsoon, a hurricane, a blitz airstrike, the cars are too wide. The cars are too wide for Monaco. Monaco is processional. It is boring. When the drivers are all coming out in commentary and going, "Oh, well, I'm gonna go have a workout later because didn't have to do anything because I only have to drive at like 45% of what I'm capable of." There's an issue when Sky reporter Natalie Pinkman is trying her best not to agree when Max Verstappen says, "What did you think of the race?" and she's doing her very best to realize, I'm working for a syndicated TV station. I have to be very careful what I say, and say it wasn't boring or something needs to be done. Then it's an issue. As much as Sky One love to say, "Oh, look at the great procession! Look at the great parade." If I want to go watch a parade, I'd go watch Macy's parade. I'd go watch Macy's Thanksgiving parade in New York. In New York, it is boring. It is tiring. Monaco has concessions where they charge the least, and to be honest, in this Liberty Media time where everything is about glitz and glamour, that's the only reason Monaco is still on the calendar, because it's on the calendar. Because look at all the stars that come out. Oh, look, Kylian Mbappe gets to wave the checkered flag. Oh, look, it's Thor. Oh, look, there's nothing. It is a boring race. Something needs to change. And that's that.
Right, here we go. Wish me luck. Right, firstly, I will say you are absolutely right in terms of cars are too wide, too heavy, not nimble enough, etc., etc. I completely agree with that. I think the rules went completely the wrong way because they involve the teams and the drivers, and the teams and drivers all want to go really, really quickly and want cars that you can't overtake it. I know they come out in the press and say they want to overtake it, but they don't. Anybody who is Roger's just had to nip off there as the phone rings, so we will just bring up this at this moment in time, and then when Magic comes back, I will change back. But yes, first up, we've got the cars are too wide. They're too big. They're too nimble, not nimble enough, etc. So Wajid is back.
Very sorry about that.
That's okay. You're allowed. You've got job interviews. But the cars are not ready for racing at all. Never mind. Never mind Monaco. Secondly, the tyres. Now, the new rules this year try and let the cars run closer together with the ground effect, etc. I agree, haven't worked quite to how people wanted because we've had a dominant Red Bull. But on the other side of it, we have had cars running closer together. So all this, leave a 3-second gap so your tyres don't overheat. You are doing that to a point, but not as much. Now onto the Monaco race itself. The race this weekend was not a classic, not one you're going to sit there and watch over and over again. I agree that. But it was not boring. There was interest. As mad as it sounds, there's interesting strategies at play. There was, in terms of Charles Leclerc, he had to try and make sure that the gap to George Russell was not going to be too big for people to pit and then jump back in. So that, somebody like Oscar could jump onto soft tyres, fly back through the field. Because if you have got 70-old tyres to 5-lap-old tyres, of course you're going to be able to. There is a chance to overtake. You might not be able to, but there's a chance. Monaco is always about risk and reward. Now, a lot of the Grand Prix, let's say the French Grand Prix at Paul Ricard. There's so much space that if you make a mistake, you stay in the race. We saw this weekend that if you make a mistake, you do not stay in the race. You are punished for your mistakes. We saw in Imola, you run wide into the gravel. At Monaco, you run into the barrier. Now, whether that barrier is on a spring like Zebedee, it's a completely different situation. They need to build the barriers a little bit stronger, I think, actually. Because that one in swimming pool too was like bending back and forward like something chronic. But the strategy that was there behind the McLarens and the Ferraris to try and make sure that things weren't going to happen. I mean, what's the other side of it for people? If you get set, let's make overtaking easy.
No, right.
Is that
sorry. So let me.
Yeah.
I've always been with you on the cars. I want the V8s, V10 back. For me, that 2008 to 2000 2000, even the early stage of the turbo hybrid, the 2013, 2014, that was I think those cars were perfect size. They were nimble. You could still get an overtake. You can still get an overtake at Monaco. There wasn't a lot, but you're still getting dive bombs down the chicane and stuff like that, right? There was still the chance. So that I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you with, but I'm not saying I'm with you. 55 million overtakes in a race doesn't mean a race is interesting. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But Oscar Piastri in the opening stages, in this example, this race he was quicker than Charles for the opening 5-10 laps. Like he hustled. If there was an element, if there was one overtaking spot. Let's take the it's not the Nouvelle chicane. Let's take the chicane. I was about to call it the Nouvelle chicane, but it's not.
Yes, it is Nouvelle. It is Nouvelle.
Yeah, let's take the Nouvelle chicane because that's the only place you can have the overtaking spot. If there is somewhere where it looks like it looks like the car can make an attempt there, or a spot where a car you can at least go side by side or whatever else, where you don't just have to move the car slightly left and you block the entire. Then I think there'd be less. I think there'd be from my point of view, there would be less complaints. I don't need 50 overtakes in a race. I can enjoy a good tactical race. I totally agree with you. I can enjoy a very good tactical race. I can enjoy tacticians. I've watched F1 long enough. I've seen some horrifically boring races. 2004 for the F 2004 anyone, or the F 2002 era. Like I've lived through those eras. I've lived through Seb Vettel as well. I've seen those eras. But at least in Monaco, with those cars you could still get an overtake. It doesn't matter if you were 30-40 seconds ahead, you could still get an overtake. My issue now with Monaco, with the current incarnation of car, and we can go back there, but the current incarnation of Monaco is not conducive for good racing with these current F1 cars. That's where for me it comes down to. I understand you're talking about strategy and everything like that, but at the end of the day, by lap 60, they were 25 seconds ahead anyway. Yeah. So that strategy thing had gone totally out the window. You shouldn't be allowed to drive a car 50 seconds slower than it's capable of on a circuit and not get punished for it. Like, where's the jeopardy in being able to drive as slow as possible?
Well, this is something actually around Monaco, it's quite high, because ask Ayrton Senna in 1988, where he suddenly started to try and back off and ended up putting it in the wall and not being seen for 2 days because he went off to his flat. But in terms of, I've mentioned the lead battle, but then you had that battle of Mercedes and Verstappen, which, again, trying to push each other into mistakes. Max saying, "Oh, it was boring." George saying, "Oh, it was boring." Well, I'm sorry, George. I'm sorry, Max. Scamper off down the road then. It's not like George Russell was looking for clear air, was it? He had 20 seconds of it.
But Max pitted and he still couldn't. The cars were too wet. He still couldn't. He had 40 laps pressure tires, and he still had no chance going around the Merc.
Is this, which I'm going to come on to in a minute with that one.
Absolutely.
The most disappointing thing I found from that race was the gap between Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda. Now, these drivers are going round 4 to 6 seconds a lap slower than they'd normally do. Why on earth have we ended up with Yuki Tsunoda 1 lap behind Lewis Hamilton? What is going on there? Why haven't somebody like RB gone, you know what? We can scamper off up the road here and we might be able to do something about them. Or Lewis had enough time for 2 pit stops for soft tyres to go for fastest lap if he wanted to. 2 pit stops. What's going on there? It's just madness.
Because they knew nothing was going to happen. Right? Well, because they knew nothing was going to happen.
So why doesn't somebody like Yuki Tsunoda, like Pierre Gasly, push that gap and just go for it for the sake of it? Because at the end of the day, risk and reward. And this is the thing. We've mentioned it before. I think Absolutely. I mentioned it on last night's stream, but I did. Teams sit there and they go, it's like Lando. Look back at Belgium last year. Was it last year Verstappen started near the back of the grid or something like that?
No, the year before.
Before.
The year before, where he was 20th and he's 18th and he came up to 5th. Talk about that year, sorry.
Where he actually took the lead on like lap 16 or something.
Where
he flew through. And he just sat there and everybody went, well, Max is going to pass me anyway. Off you go. And then you only have a bit of a fight from maybe Lewis, Lando doesn't fight it. Maybe Charles gives up a little bit of fighting Carlos, but that's about it. And everybody just goes, yeah, off you go. Let's get rid of this. Let's race against the clock. We're not doing World Rally now. Race the cars. Like you saw when I think it was somebody come. Yeah, look at Daniel Ricciardo in the sprint at Miami. He had something to fight for in terms of fourth, I want to say.
Fourth, yeah, because Checo overtook him, and then he kept the one. He kept one of the Ferraris behind him, didn't he?
Yeah, kept Seitz and somebody else behind him. Piastri it was. And he fought and defended. That's what we should be seeing throughout the grid. But we don't. We see this, I don't want to lose loads of time. So that is my main complaint. Like, Yuki Tsunoda did not need to be a lap down on Lewis Hamilton to finish 7th. I think that was a little, we could have seen more from that.
But you don't. You don't get punished. But it's not like the FIA or Liberty Media come out and said you can't do that. They allowed the fast to happen when they allowed Lonzo, who, I didn't because I keep on forgetting Lewis Hamilton's got real estate in Valencia in the Valencia apartment in Fernando Alonso's head. They allowed that farcical stuff to happen when they allowed Fernando to push everyone back 55 seconds because he didn't want to like if you don't want stuff like Yuki Tsunoda being a lap behind or 6 seconds behind, the FIA have never stopped themselves from getting involved with now the FIA and Liberty Media developed a conscience. Now there's no history shows the rule makers have never stopped themselves getting involved when they think something's processional or farcical. So get involved in. If there's no punishment for the driver be driving 10 seconds a lap slower and ending up a lap behind, knowing he's going to finish 7th and no one's going to say anything about it, then why is it? Then it shouldn't be an issue.
But then I say, I'm just trying to think what the gap was in the end. I haven't actually got the timings here, but Albon wasn't far behind Tsunoda. Gasly wasn't far behind Albon. I just don't see why those teams couldn't. I mean, I'm looking now. Tsunoda did 14.7. That's only 6 tenths off Lewis Hamilton's fastest lap. Gasly did a 15.6. Those 3 drivers, whether they're going to finish in that position or not, could quite easily have pushed it down the road. And, we've seen old type. There's no reason. I don't see what RB, Williams, and Alpine gained from driving that slow, when they could have gained more if something had happened in front. Just personally. The last point of why this Grand Prix wasn't boring is too many people watch these AWS. We're 2 centimeters from the wall. Let's make it look exciting. We're going to gain a battle in 2 laps' time. I saw somebody put up a tweet saying it went from awake to asleep in 2 laps' time. It's like, I get it. I get why people find it boring. But if you don't have them titles, come on. I mean, from the times where you used to have the scroll at the bottom of the screen, and it was the top 6. People turn around and you'd have to wait for it to come around. And then you'd go, right, okay, well, our pit stop was 15 seconds. So I'll tell you what, let's add 15 seconds onto his time. Right, okay, so he'll end up here. That's why he's not pitting. Nobody sits there and watches a Grand Prix like that anymore in the modern era, because they sit there and they wait for somebody to tell them. Work it out yourself. Just enjoy the racing. Enjoy the skill of driving around Monaco. I mean, we've already said these are the size of tanks or buses. I'm not going to use buses, actually, because I've seen the buses in Capri. They're quite small. How they get around them roads, I'll never know. But that's a different story. In terms of the skill to drive around Monaco, it is how these guys have not hit the wall in 78 laps, trying to drive slowly as well. It's easier, actually, for them to be fully focused, head in the game, just going for it. You guys will just see my lovely bald spot. that you knew was there anyway. But yeah, so the drivers just need to drive hard enough. But if you're driving 10 seconds off the pace, you actually lose concentration, and that's quite difficult. So while I agree it wasn't the most exciting Monaco Grand Prix, there's ways to make it exciting at times without 60 overtakes or things like that. I know Wajid has already said he agrees with the overtaking and things like that. I'm just putting it out there as one of the reasons why the Monaco Grand Prix wasn't boring. Also, final point, everybody has been on about Max Verstappen winning races and being boring. Charles Leclerc went and won it. Verstappen was nowhere near it. And there was a battle for the lead. Piastri was pushing Leclerc. Leclerc was being pushed by Sainz, and Sainz was trying to back up Norris, and Norris was trying to get through and pass a lot of them. Things were happening for the lead of the race, which people have been calling out for years. You've got it. And then you go, oh, it was really boring. The only people who come into the race, into the paddock, and went and literally said that race was boring was George Russell, Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton, because the three of them were fighting for 5th, 6th, and 7th, which they don't want to be fighting for. They couldn't do anything about it because the strategy was just there. So they weren't fighting for the lead. They weren't fighting for points like RB, Williams, and Alpine. And they got bored because they wanted to do something about it and couldn't. And also, final point, we've said about the car whips. Isn't that about the cars, not the circuit?
Yeah, but
so why are we changing circuits for the cars? I said this about many other circuits. I think Australia.
I've always said I've always said about Monaco that the Nouvelle Chicane needs to be wider. Like they changed, I've even with the old incarnation of cars, I've always said the Nouvelle Chicane needs to be wider. Sorry, that's just a me thing. Sorry,
they do need to do something down there, but I suppose it's difficult because it's something that needs to be built in and able to use cars throughout the weekend. So I suppose it could be restricted with lanes and stuff around there, but we've got cones, so can use them out.
It's not. Trust me, as someone who's driven there, that's not that restricted.
But yeah, we'll have to see what they come up with. But that is why I don't think it was a boring Grand Prix. And we also hear quite often that Spain is a boring Grand Prix. So we're going to have to probably see if that is a thing when we get to Spain. But first up, we'll have Canada, not this weekend. Talking about strategies and stupid overtakes, Indianapolis 500 happened this weekend, and I might get round to doing something about that. But we're going to have to. We'll have to have a sit down and a break after that very late night over in Indiana. But that is what happens when you have a race. You know, everybody goes, "Oh, that was really exciting." Yeah, because people were passing back and forth. It was basically Monaco, but the other extreme, passing back and forth to save fuel and tyres. But that's not a problem.
I think for me, look, at the end of for me, I'm going to repeat again. For me, for me, the caveat of a racetrack, you need at least one place that there's some jeopardy, like you can overtake. I if you tactically save up all your cars or whatever, that's fine. But there needs to be an element of risk, and there needs to be a punishment for being able. You shouldn't be able to keep a car so easily behind you when you're driving 7 seconds a lap. Like the Danny Rick was just quickly. The Danny Rick win when his engine went. Was it the MGU-H or the MGU-K or the MGU Chat GBT he lost in the engine, where he lost 60% of 60 brake horsepower. Monaco is the only racetrack in the world where you can be 60 brake horsepower down, still win a race and have no punishment. The race was exciting for the jeopardy because no one knew if Ricciardo's engine was going to go. But in reality, that's the only race in the world you don't get punished for your engine going.
It's very true.
I just think the cars aren't going to get small. The cars aren't going to get smaller. If anything, they'll get wider. We're not going to get the V10s, which I miss, or the V8s, which I miss so much. So that's why, instead of, you can't trust the rule makers, for me, there needs to be a change to the track. And that's it. That's my point.
No, that's fair enough. And if you have any opinions yourselves, pop them in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or pop them into any of the lives we have on Twitch. We also have X. No, we're going that way. There's Wadget's X at Burnt Out Travels. There's mine, my Instagram, which is, no, we'll get there.
There we go.
I'm on Instagram at that. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitch, whatever you care to call it. But yeah, so no, we haven't gone for the OnlyFans, and we won't be doing so. But Wadget, thank you for joining us. We've managed to keep it only just about over 90 minutes this time, but mainly due to our discussion about whether Monaco was a boring Grand Prix. Next week, we will be coming back with the Canadian Grand Prix preview. I always have to be careful with that one because I kind of quite often say it was a review. And hopefully, maybe we'll get around to doing something to do with Le Mans and Indy and that, but we'll see. Just depends what shows up on the channel. So, share this with your friends, hit subscribe, hit like, and thank you for joining us, Wadjet.
Thank you for having me, as always.
And we will join you next week for the Canadian Grand Prix. Goodbye.